Okay, so welcome, Vadim, to our Australian Discworld convention in Sydney. It's a pleasure to have you join us. It's exciting as well. It's good to see the insights behind the movie making. So it'll be
With
fun.
pleasure. It's great. It's great to be with you, albeit virtually.
Yes. So how did you get into screenwriting, and was it something that you knew you wanted to do always?
Well, Terry Pratchett's Hogfather was actually my first proper screen credit as a writer.
Excellent.
Because before that I've always really been predominantly a director more than a writer. And I've always found writing incredibly difficult when it comes to, any kind of sort of fictional writing. That solitary thing about writing where you just sit there and the empty page looms, and you have to decide, where do you start? What is that first scratching on the page? I've always found that incredibly difficult. So the absolute joy for me was having the most unbelievable raw material you could possibly imagine to start with. And I learned to make films through editing. You know, I
Mm.
actually believe that's the most important part of the process in some ways. Is you learn to make films by editing, and films are made in the edit. And so, for example, I made a film in 2004 called uh, Jiminy Glick in Lullerwood, which was my Hollywood debut with Martin Short and Steve Martin, and it was entirely improvised. And Martin Short's three best friends are Tom Hanks, Steve Martin, and Steven Spielberg. So in the year it took us to edit, I remember on one occasion during that year, Marty came in and he'd shown the cut to Steven Spielberg, and he asked for his advice, and Steven said, "Spend all your money on the editor." So if that's true for Steven Spielberg, then I'm going to take that for myself. And I still maintain that that is the case. So in many ways, adapting Hogfather was an editing exercise, because really what I wanted to do is to make the most faithful adaptation I possibly could, using the gold dust of Terry's original words. And therefore, in many ways, it was about making decisions to do with what we kept and what we lost, and then the order that we kept things in. So I would say I adapted the screenplay, and sorry, I adapted the book into the screenplay. And in some ways, to be able to start with that extraordinary raw material meant that I felt confident to be able to go into my first really proper screenwriting um, experience, that I could go in with confidence.
Did he have was Terry looking over your shoulder the whole time, or did he give you some room to breathe and then come in and check on you? Or
So I remember the the very first time I sent a draft to Terry. You can imagine how nervous
yeah,
I was waiting for that reaction, because if he'd said no, I hate it at that point, I think we wouldn't have even got anywhere near shooting it. Um, and the thing was, I have a very different way of adapting a book, and it's to do with the fact that it's very hard to get to know a book for me, by just reading it through. So what I do is I start by, and Rob Wilkins sent me in Word format Hogfather, the novel.
yeah.
And I basically turned the entire novel into a screenplay, which was about 300
Okay.
pages long. So to
Yes.
give you context, that's 300 minutes. It might have been
Yes.
longer, but I literally turned every scene in the book, in the order that it was in the book, into a screenplay form.
Yeah.
Sometimes I turn stage directions into dialogue, or adapt the dialogue so it kind of it was written in a screenwriter's form, if you like, or a screenplay form. And then I would then have my long, long, long form version. And then I would edit it down. I liken this to having a sculptor having a block of, a block of rock that you slowly chip away at until it suddenly, eventually starts to take a form, and then eventually becomes the beautiful sculpture at the end.
Yeah.
And so that is my process. Now, what that meant was that by going through the entire book, I then got a knowledge of the book and I knew where everything was.
Mm,
And then the next part of the process was to, because we were going to be in 2 hour halves because it was
mm,
a limited mini series. It
yeah.
meant I had, the most important thing was to choose structurally where to break the story, and it had to be
Mm,
the collapse of the Hogfather's Palace of Bones. That
yes.
had to be the kind of cliffhanger at the end of the
Yes.
first half. Once I'd
Yeah.
done that, it was then a question of structuring and adapting and keeping as much as I possibly could. So when I sent that version to Terry, I remember going down to see him, and he said, "Well, I think it's rather good because most of it is my words." And that's why he
Yes.
loved it, because it was so
Yeah.
faithful to the book, and
Yeah.
which I always
I,
wanted it to be.
I think that's why the fans like it as well, because you there's nothing worse than going through and then going, wait a minute, that didn't happen. Like it's people the true faithfuls appreciate if you're faithful back to them. So yeah,
Exactly,
that was well
exactly.
done. Yeah.
Thank you
Um,
very much.
can I ask, whose idea was it to, and I know this wasn't in your questions, but I woke up with it
That's all
last
right.
night. Whose idea was it to start with the color of magic?
Well, we did Hogfather first.
Oh, I
Actually,
see.
we shot Hogfather first, and
Ah,
what I discovered was that Terry had been approached for 25 years over and over again by people wanting the rights. Okay. Um, and he wasn't interested in people coming for the rights. He wanted to
yeah,
know, which book do you want and why do you want to tell that story? And I always loved Hogfather. It was one of the first books I read, probably
yeah,
fourth or fifth book I'd read. And I loved it because I actually genuinely think it's one of the funniest books. I also think it's a very relatable story because if basically it's about Christmas, and
yes,
everybody loves a Christmas story. You know, Hogs watches Christmas. It's an easy thing to understand, and we were always thinking, how do you entree where this is and how it is and how the parallels are? And I thought Hogswatch was a good way into Discworld, and I also thought that actually for a television broadcast Christmas back then in 2006 or 7, 2006, you know, the Christmas event broadcast was still a really big thing. And I felt that it would give the broadcaster, Sky in this case, something to hang it on. It could be a Christmas broadcast. Uh, and of course, the great thing about a Christmas movie or a Christmas series is that you can only put it out at Christmas.
yeah,
So that's the bad thing. The bad thing about a Christmas series or film is that you can only put it out at Christmas. The good thing
yeah,
about a Christmas film or series is that you can put it out every Christmas.
yes,
And that's of course what's happened. I mean, it's still playing on Sky to this day. 20 years later, it's still, I think it's its 20th anniversary of being broadcast without break, actually,
yeah.
since the beginning. And it's, people still contact me and say, it's our Christmas watch. So that was the decision. And I remember, I'm trying to remember what the test was, because what Terry would always do, if to anybody who was coming to try and get the rights, was to go, so Mr. Nutt in Unseen Academicals, what is he? And unless you could tell him what Mr. Nutt was, then you were stuck. And he knew then you hadn't either read the book or really cared about it.
Yeah.
And I wish I could remember what the Terry test question was for me, when I first sat there with him. I can't remember what it was, to be honest. I wish I could. It's gone.
And, and were
But
you a reader as a kid um, of Terry's books or
no, I remember them on my school bookshelves in the library, and I never actually got round to reading them. I read everything
Mm.
else. Lord of the Rings is my favorite book
Yeah,
of all time.
yeah.
So I read Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, obviously, and various other sort of fantasy. Um, but I'd always seen them on the shelf, and I'm like, I think quite a few of us who come to Terry later, I was put off by those covers, the famous covers. They put
Ah,
me off actually. Um, and then I read Color of Magic first, as probably in my late 30s, I would say, mid to late 30s. And I went,
yeah.
why didn't I start doing this a long time ago? And I loved it. So yeah, that was my. I would say that was my sort of Color of Magic was my entree, and then I started to try and read them in order, and then I started to jump around after I read Sorcery, and then I started to jump around, and Hogfather was pretty quickly read. Mort, obviously, so in other words, I kind of I then started to kind of skitter around,
Yeah.
um, and the reason we did Color of Magic second was because I sort of wanted to go back to the beginning, for obvious reasons. But the deal that we'd done with an actor called now Sir David Jason
Hmm.
was because he played um, uh, Death's assistant, Albert, in Hogfather,
Albert, yes.
was that as a much younger man, David had always wanted to play Rincewind
Ah,
and had never managed to get the rights. And so he still wanted to play Rincewind, even though he was much, much older. And
yeah,
hence, we agreed that if he would play Albert in Hogfather, that he could play Rincewind in Color of Magic. So, and I'm somebody who, I like to try and be good to my word, and because I'd said that to David, we did it. It meant we had to kind of do some clever things in the adaptation,
yeah.
to justify him being a 60-year-old wizard, not a 21-year-old wizard, which basically I remember the meeting with Terry where I said, I think I've got it. Basically, the reason he's still there is because he's never graduated. In other words, he's such a bad wizard. He's failed his
Yeah,
exams constantly, but he doesn't want to leave. And
yeah.
Terry went with that. So that was how we ended up doing Color of Magic second with David Jason.
And that's how I've always thought. I know that younger people like Rincewind, and he hasn't graduated, but I've always thought of him as he's forever there because he's never great. So I think you got it right anyway.
Yeah, I think in essence, yeah, yeah. And
Yeah,
David,
that makes a lot of sense.
and David could still run. He
Yeah.
could still run, which is great. So
Yes.
Rincewind,
As long as as long as you got good legs, you're fine.
exactly, yeah. And Rincewind's defining character is that he's very good at running away. So,
Yes, yes. Do you have a favorite book, like in all the ones you read? Like for instance, um, I thought I never didn't have a favorite book, and but I've realized mine is Reaper Man just because of Death's brush with like it's a major brush with humanity. Do you have a favorite?
Reaper Man is up there. My absolute favorite is Guards.
Ah, yes,
Um,
yeah.
so secretly, I did write, and I've written an adaptation of Guards. One day, I hope. One day, I'd love to do it. Um, Guards, Hogfather, obviously, and then probably either Mort or the other one that I've adapted, which is again I'd love to do at some point, is Unseen Academicals because I love football.
Ah, that'd
So
be
I would say
hilarious. Just the football
Guards.
game.
Yeah, it's I'm very very fond of Unseen Academicals, and yeah, but I would say probably Guards is my favorite book all round.
Ah, excellent. I mean, we all have our own things that we like. It's like someone asked who would be your favorite character, and you just go, all my children are my favorite, depending on the day. So it depends on the book that you're reading. I would say Death is my favorite character
Yeah,
because of he's trying to understand humanity.
yeah.
Um, and then after that, everyone else is a close second.
No, I think Death is probably my favorite character as well.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
that's really good.
yeah.
So we've already talked about how you were faithful to the story, and that's what we love most about it. Have you ever been tempted to sway a little bit to the right or to the left just to change it a little bit?
Sometimes you have to. Normally it's to it's to get the book into the time. that you're needed that you're required to deliver the film in. So
Yeah.
if it's a feature film, it's got to be between 90 minutes and 120, really, maybe 2.5 hours max. And it's very hard with Terry's books, I think, to limit them to that, which I think is one of the reasons why Hogfather and Color of Magic succeed. Although, of course, Color of Magic is actually two books.
Yes.
He allowed us to use um,
Interesting times.
Interesting Times. No, not
Yeah.
Interesting Times.
No.
What's the second book? Um,
Like fantastic.
yeah, Light
No.
Fantastic. Yes,
Oh,
Light
okay.
Fantastic. Yeah,
I knew it was one of those.
yes. So actually, in very simple terms, because really, Color of Magic doesn't complete its story until Light Fantastic.
Yes.
And so he allowed us to make Color of Magic the two books brought together, because Light Fantastic has a better ending. Frankly, it has a,
Yeah.
when the other world emerges. My favorite moment in Color of Magic is when the turtle planets, the baby turtle planets, emerge at the end, and it's beautiful.
Yes.
Although I say so myself, I think it's probably the nicest, it's the loveliest bit of Color of Magic.
Yeah.
It was really and lovely. Oh, the fantastic Tim Curry, being the best
Yes.
bad guy ever on
I
the top
know.
of the tower of a Tower of Arts, looking out over the planets exploding. I mean, it's sort of Terry is most poetic, I think in many ways, and so yes, in a way, you could to put both those books into one episode, into one film, would never have worked, because you'd lose too much texture.
Yeah.
And I think the great thing about a mini series or a series is that I think you can you can deliver the texture, and there's so much detail in Terry, so much detail in Discworld, and you
Mm.
want to be able to deliver those little details. And and I think the danger sometimes with movie adaptations is that they can end up losing so much of the book that particularly the fans get disappointed. I watched the Richard Osman adaptation of um, what's the novel? It was mega cast this Christmas. Um, oh gosh, funny novel. Oh, what's it called? We're gonna have to redo this bit. I can't remember what it's called.
No, we like to see people
The
struggle.
Thursday
It's
Murder Club.
good.
Thursday Murder Club.
Oh,
So
yes, yes. Yeah.
it's Thursday Murder, yeah. So
Yeah.
if you, for example, I really like Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. It's a very funny
Me
book.
too.
And then I have to say, a bit disappointed by the movie adaptation on Netflix, because they had to cut so much out.
Mm.
And I didn't want to do that with, any of the Pratchett adaptations. You want to be able to deliver Discworld with all its detail, with all its color.
Yeah.
And I think you can do that in a series. So I think that's the challenge, is that when you are removing things. But even then, in Hogfather, I love the Wassailas, in Hogfather, but there just wasn't a
Yes.
place for them.
Yeah.
I just couldn't fit it in.
No. Well, I mean, understand what you mean with Thursday Murder Club, is the fact that a lot of people thought they were ripped off. Basically, you feel like it was summarized too much.
Yeah.
And it could have stripped. You go, oh, is that it?
I
It's
think it
like
would
they
have made a
took
better
out all the good
series.
bits. But anyway.
I think it would have made a better series. And I think we were lucky, with the ones that we did, that we had that screen time to be able to really deliver the books faithfully.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, and it helps it if you're doing mini series, especially like for Hogfather and going postal,
Hmm.
because you you've got it's in two slots, so you've got to fill that time and you've got to fill that time so you can fit more into it. Whereas a movie, they go, okay, this is the time slot, so you have to reduce
Yeah,
it a lot.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
no,
Yeah.
that makes sense. That's a lot of good. So you were saying before um I forgot what I was going to ask you then. I'm having one of your moments.
That's all right.
If you had the chance, you've already told us about the books that you would like to adapt and that you've already written the screenplay and everything
Yeah.
for. So hopefully Rob Wilkins will hear this and you'll go, oh, that's
Yes.
a good idea.
Yeah. Come on, Rob. Let's join St.
Yeah.
Academicals. The time has
Yeah.
come.
Yeah, he'll be this interview will be showing on Saturday morning, but Rob will appear on Friday night. So I might drop a hint in there that
Yeah, please do.
that
Tell
okay,
him,
talk
tell
to
him you'd love
Vadim.
to. Everyone would love to see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so were there any other challenges in turning, well, even not just with these books, but with other screenplays? Is there any, ch what are the challenges besides trying to work out what fits into the screenplay?
Um, Before I answer that, just want to say what I want to add a little bit to your first question about Terry looking over my shoulder because I forgot to say one thing.
Yes. Yeah.
The most amazing thing about having Terry to collaborate with, because it was a collaboration,
Yeah.
was that it was like having $100,000 a week script doctor on hand. Because that's what they pay. They'll pay these guys in Hollywood. The guy who came up with "I'll be back," right, was a
Yeah.
$100,000 a week script writer who was on for 2 weeks, and that was the line he came up with. But my God, what a line! And I
Yeah.
always say that was what it was like working with Terry. So I go, I've got to this bit in the script, and I've got this problem, and he'd come up with an immediate solution. It was absolutely fantastic. Or, for example, we were on set with Jeremy Irons playing the patrician, and
Yeah.
we had one long day with him, and we sat down right at the beginning of the day. And Jeremy had some small thoughts about the script, and he said, I wasn't sure about this line, and that was there with Terry, and Terry said, think we need to just rewrite it like this. And he added the word, which was so brilliant. It's not in the book. He said, "You little scamp."
Skip.
And it was the perfect word for
Yeah.
Rincewind from the patrician. And that was what it was like. And that went into the script. It wasn't in the book. So that was what it was like. It was like having the god of Discworld, obviously, but with the brain bigger than a planet, being there to kind of give me any fireworks that I needed at any point to make anything work.
Yeah.
So I wanted to say that. So to answer your question, there's a really brilliant book about screenwriting called Adventures in the Screen Trade. Do that again. There's a really brilliant book about screenwriting called Adventures in the Screen Trade, written by William Goldman, who wrote my favorite movie, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and All the President's Men.
Yeah.
And the sort of shibboleth, the philosophical basis of that book is that, number one, and bear in mind it's written by a screenwriter, the three most important things about a film are the script, the script, and the script. And then he says the three most important things about the script are the structure, and the structure.
Yeah.
And in screenplays, that's absolutely the case. It's working out what happens and the
Mm.
order that it happens in. And that's the biggest challenge is when you're adapting, you the structure of a book won't necessarily follow the structure of a screenplay or
Yes.
a movie
Mm.
or the ideal structure, or it won't follow the structure that works for a miniseries. So actually, it's the restructuring of the story that's the absolutely fundamental thing. And that was the reason why I asked Terry if I could bring Light Fantastic into Color of Magic, was because I realized there wasn't an ending.
Yes.
And the that was a structural decision. So I would say once you get the structure in order, the next challenge is making sure you really understand your characters. Now, the bit I'm not very good at about screenwriting is creating characters. I'm a pretty kind of ordinary, I really am a kind of quite ordinary, pretty kind of down to earth, person. I really know my craft, but I'm not brilliant at going, oh, what we need is a character that does this. I'm not great at finding those kind of
Mm.
amazing characters that you've never seen before. That's what's really hard, which is why for
Mm.
me, the adaptations of Discworld were a joy because they are full of the best characters ever because
Yes.
because the maestro created them. So
Mm.
I was able to, for me, Terry did the hard work. He did the bit that I'm not so strong at, but what I'm really good at is editing. and adapting. And once I understand the character, I can then write the I can then write in that character's voice. And I remember the first time we read Hogfather, again, I could wish I could remember the line that it is. I'd written a new line for, I want to say it was for, who was it for? I'd written a new line. It was a new line of dialogue for a character. And Terry went, "Oh, that's very good. Is that one of mine?" And I said, it was at his house actually. And I remember saying, "Oh, that's one of mine actually." He said, "Oh," and I remember thinking to myself, "Okay, I've passed the test. I've written a line that Terry would be proud of."
I can just
And
see him there with his hands crossed and going and give.
yeah, yeah, I remember that moment. I remember that moment thinking, yeah, the master had kind of, approved something the servant had done.
Yeah.
So yeah, that
Did
was
you did you at first go
yeah.
listen you try and go, uh-oh.
Yeah, yeah, no, when no, I took my credit. I took my credit for the line. I thought, I want him to know, I've understood the voice, because
Yeah,
that's the thing. You if you understand the character, and then you can deliver the voice. And actually, I've never done a scientific sort of analysis of it, or, page by page. But I've got pretty good at writing for death. Um, Very good at writing for Rincewind.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, just I think, if you find a character, and sometimes where you take a piece out from a novel in the adaptation, you sometimes have to create some glue that joins up the gap. So that's a
yes,
particular adaptation issue, where you have to be able to do it in a way that is consistent with the characters, that doesn't break the rules of Discworld. You
yeah,
know, and you have to understand Discworld. There are no
yeah.
guns, there is no electricity. So the less said about that series that had electricity and guns, that we shall not talk about, which is an abomination to us, that those of us who are fans, that broke the
Yes,
fundamental rules of Discworld.
yeah,
That is an adaptation that did not. We all know what we're talking about. It it,
yes, we do.
it did not obey it. It was almost as if they'd never read the books and
Yeah,
didn't understand the world. And
yeah,
the thing about Discworld and the books is that it is a world. And Terry had thought about it down to the last detail. Where does the oil for the oil lamps in Ankh-Morpork come from?
yeah,
And when you start to ask that question, and then what happens if there's a problem with getting the oil, and you end up with the fifth elephant,
yeah,
which is actually all about resources and international relations, right? And so
yes,
you but you've got to understand that there's no electricity in Ankh-Morpork, so it's all candlelit, and therefore, where does the oil come from? And suddenly you realize it's a world that works. And
yes,
I think that's, for me, in terms of adapting Discworld, that was vital. I never wanted to add something new that wasn't part of the world.
yeah.
That
I agree with you that the like him working out, well, where does the oil go to? Um, I've I'm writing a book and
oh,
I've done a couple of courses and one of the a couple a lot but one of the tutors we were talking about writing fantasy and one of the tutors came back to it and she said you've got to know you don't have to tell the reader everything but you've got to know what happens in your world and she said basically what happens to the poo? And she says you've got to think about, you know, and basically it's the same thing, what happens to where does the oil come from? So it's
yeah,
the same sort of thing,
yeah,
getting to know the workings of everything, and you don't have to tell people about it, but you just have to understand it.
yeah,
Yeah. And he was clever.
absolutely,
He turned it into a whole book.
yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think that's, that was, is one of the great things about it. But just
Yeah.
generally, I would say, once you've I think once you've got your structure right, you know your characters, you've you're able to deliver technically something that makes people want to know what happens next, then you're
Yeah.
there. I mean, I remember the other meeting I remember with Terry was that we were doing some development work on Color of Magic, and we got to a point where there were some notes from the broadcast there, And he sat there. He said, "Look," and the particular person I think had given some notes in kind of classic script editor form, with all
Yeah.
the theory of story structure and and all that kind of stuff that you can read in books. And Terry went, "No, it's very simple." He said, "Boy meets girl, boy falls in love with girl, girl doesn't want to fall in love with boy, um, uh, boy tries to get girl back, gets girl back, it goes wrong again, and in the end, it's a happy ending." I'm paraphrasing, and he did it
Yeah, yeah,
brilliantly
yeah.
and incredibly funnily. But it was basically, Terry's understanding of storytelling, was based on the fact that he knew that you just needed to know the very basics of a beginning, a middle, and an end,
Yeah.
and that you wanted your protagonist to succeed, and they had obstacles. But he would never put it in
Yes.
those terms. It was always put
No.
very simply, and of course he was effortlessly a genius at it.
Yes. Yeah, occasionally I'll be reading one of his books and I go, "Oh my God, those are the best words." You just go, how it's amazing. It's really amazing. Like they should use his books to go, okay, you want to write a fantasy? Terry Pratchett.
Yeah,
That's it. And
yeah,
that's your book.
yeah, yeah,
Follow,
absolutely.
go through, follow it, work out the structure, and then use the
Yeah,
right words, and then voila,
yeah.
it's the
Easy.
best thing. Easy. No, it's not. And like you were saying before about you can't get the characters. Um, yeah, that's hard as well, and trying to make people like them,
Yeah,
whether they're a
yeah,
hateful person or a lovely person, you've still got to make a
yeah,
person enjoy that character and be
yeah,
invested. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
exactly. I mean,
but
the patrician is evil, but we love him, and we
yes,
wish we could be him
yeah,
sometimes, and we kind of love to hate him.
yeah,
He's wonderful, and he's funny. He's funny,
yes.
and yet he's all powerful, and yet you kind of don't know where you stand with him.
Yeah.
It's
He
it's great.
kind of he sort of comes across like he's Terry. I just
Well,
think in
this
a
is very
way.
interesting. Oh no, there's no question. There are a number of characters that combine to make Terry.
Yeah,
One of them is definitely the patrician.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's really good. I've heard when we were setting up this meeting, your agent had said that you were overseas filming so what were you doing?
Oh, well,
Let's do a sideline.
okay. So this is quite interesting. So that particular filming was in Saudi Arabia.
Oh, no. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and fascinatingly, don't believe anything that you read in the press about that country. I've actually been twice to film in the last 2 years. Saudi Arabia is absolutely, fundamentally progressing and reforming itself in extraordinary ways. I actually think it's probably the most exciting place, and I don't mean because of the current terrible situation.
Yes.
It is absolutely under the Vision 2030, which is their program to transform themselves from an economy just based 90% on oil to an economy that is much more um, um, varied, diverse. That is involving a complete transformation of their society for the good. And it is transforming faster than you can blink.
Mm.
So I used to give the example 18 months ago, I was filming with the Al Nasser women's football team for a documentary, short documentary, docu-short, about how things are changing for women in Saudi Arabia. In
Yes.
2018, they couldn't even go and watch a football match. They
Yeah.
are now professional footballers. This is 2023. They are now professional footballers training on the same training pitch as Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yeah. They've
Now,
come a long way.
they've come a long way, admittedly from, uh, um, from a place of, of that we might regard as very medieval, even at times, but they are trying to do what we took 300 years to do in
Mm.
30.
Yeah.
And it's extraordinary. You know, I've got lots now of young Saudi friends, and you
Mm.
can feel the freedom, you can
Yes.
sense it, and
Yeah.
it can only be for the good. You know,
Yes.
it's a very exciting place to film, and I'm making some documentaries, short documentaries that are documenting those changes, and
Excellent.
long may it continue.
Yeah.
But that was what I was in Saudi Arabia filming that.
Oh, that's brilliant. I have what you were saying. I have a friend who is a midwife over there.
Oh.
And she, as soon as all the chaos started, she's going, I feel she feels very safe. She can hear the planes going overhead and she knows about it, but she says these are the nicest people. Like she,
The Saudis
just
are they're so hospitable. They have a British sense of humor, or should I
yeah,
say, the Saudis and the British share a sense of humor. I can guarantee you.
yes.
I'm writing stuff actually. I'm writing a comedy feature film for set in Saudi and developing an animated feature film um, for set in Saudi as well. In with the sort of Saudi animals. They have an
Yeah.
amazing nature. You know, it's not just camels, by the way. So it's yeah. I'm very fond of the place, and I think it's you know it's clearly got a long way to go in lots of different areas, but it's
Yeah.
absolutely progressing in the right way. And you know, I believe we should be engaging with that. So yeah, so that was what I was filming. The main thing is I'm prepping in early prep for a movie that we're going to shoot in July, which is it's called Dance of the Macaroni Flowers, and
Okay.
it's I would describe it as Ken Loach's Kes meets Billy Elliot in Newcastle.
Okay. Okay. As soon as she said Billy Elliot, I went, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh no,
It's a
that's brilliant.
dance. There's a dance element to it. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Something, is that a little bit different to what you normally
Um,
film, do you think?
no, in the sense that I think the things I'm always drawn to are comedy, emotion, and I think the things I'm always drawn to are comedy and emotion.
Yeah.
Um, and I love a film that makes you laugh and cry, and sometimes both at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's what that film will be. So
Oh, brilliant.
you know, I
Yeah, I
think
like that
that's
type of
there
thing as
in,
well.
you know, I'll give you an example from Discworld in Hogfather. I don't know if you remember right towards the end, um, when and again you're going to have to remind me the name of the character, the big character that the big fella. Oh, what's his name?
The Hogfather.
Yeah, right at the end. Oh, what's his name? He wears the overalls. Ah,
Uh,
oh,
I've forgotten.
no, I've forgotten his name. Okay, so right at the end of
Okay.
Hogfather, there's that when the big character in the overalls has come
Oh,
back,
yes, I remember. Yes.
um,
Yeah.
played brilliantly by Stephen Marcus, and
Yeah.
he comes back, because he wants to clear up everything, to brush up all the teeth and everything,
Yeah.
and we were on set, and I remember Terry um, said we need to give him a handkerchief. So it's a really emotional moment because he comes back and he's got the dog. He's the character of the dog, and
Yes.
very sweet and kind of a bit simple, really.
Yes, he was.
Um,
That's right. Yeah.
yes, oh, gosh, I
I
wish I
think
could.
Tia Timey knocked one of his teeth out.
Yes, that's right. He did.
Yes.
Yes, well
Yes.
done. And
Yeah.
I remember Terry was on set and he said, "You do that again. Let's give him a handkerchief." Because it was a really emotional thing where he comes back and him and Michelle Dockery, um, um, his character, they're sort of bonding at the end, and it's really
Yeah.
emotional. And Terry said, "Get him to blow his nose right at the end." And it took this scene that was lovely and full of pathos, and it ends with this wonderful laugh as he goes right at the end. And that for me sums up. That's me. That's my sweet spot. It's make them laugh, make them cry, and
Yeah.
ideally both at the same time. So
Well,
yeah, I think that's so in that sense, Dance the Macaroni Flowers is will be in that tradition. The last feature documentary I did was about um, Britain's greatest ever all-round athlete, Daley Thompson, which I did last year. And although that's a film about our greatest ever athlete, he won 2 Olympic gold medals. It's really a film about fathers and sons, um,
yes.
and that has real emotion to it.
Mm,
It's a film that's not just about sport.
mm.
So I would say it's taken me a long time to realize that that is my sweet spot. That's what I really love, or where I find my heart is in my storytelling. I think
Yeah.
that um, the that thread will always be there. Um, there's that wonderful speech which I should have prepared a bit of for this, um, where uh, where Terry's talking about fantasy and Hogfather, and the lines are of death talking about falling ape. It's where the falling ape meets the darn. We're gonna have to look it up. I'm gonna look it up because I can't not do this one. Um, uh,
And I'm not good at remembering quotes, so
no, nor
you're
me.
on your own there.
Yeah, they give me 2 seconds and I'll find it.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I once spent. Oh, this is the intro. So I once spent an entire afternoon with the actor Gerard Butler and the director Jim
Yeah,
Sheridan in a Dublin pub, and
yeah,
because I worked with Jerry, and he was having a chat with Jim about being in one of his films in America, and that was the most interesting afternoon I think I've ever spent with another director. And the thing that Jim said was that the film people think is a visual medium, but it's not. It's an emotional medium.
yes,
That's so true, and I do
yes,
believe that's the power of cinema, the power of visual storytelling, um, is in that truth. And so for me, I think one of the most emotional moments in Hogfather, and actually probably in any Terry Pratchett Discworld book as well, because I think it's probably fundamental to I think what Terry believes, and he it's that moment when uh, and I'm going to sort of try and quote it as best I can. Um, it's towards the end of the story, and Susan says, "All right, I'm not stupid. You're saying humans need fantasies to make life bearable, and I'll try and do good death as well as I
yeah,
can. Really, really, as if it was some kind of pink pill. No, humans need fantasy to be human, to be the place where the falling angel meets the rising ape."
yeah,
So, you know, pure emotion delivered beautifully by Ian Richardson. And
yeah,
I think that for me that's cinema. That's it's emotional. It's emotional in the film as well. And I think it's telling the truth at the same time.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, and it's the same with books as well. Like it's all about making the person who's reading or viewing um just care about the person, and
Yeah.
you walk away, and that's what makes people more interested in coming back and watching. Like I've watched Hogfather quite a few times. I've also watched my favorite is Going Postal.
Right. Yes.
Um, so I've watched that a few times because that
Yeah.
has all the things, Voice von Lipwig is just
Yeah, it's a brilliant character.
it's
Just so I
brilliant.
don't want to take credit where credit is not due. I produced that.
No,
I didn't write or direct it.
yes, I
It's
know.
brilliantly directed by John. So
Yeah,
yeah. But it's brilliantly done, and it's
yeah,
also very very faithful to the book.
yes. Once again, and that I think that's the thing with the movies is that they are faithful, and I think I can say I appreciate, but I'm sure everyone in our audience will appreciate the fact that it was faithful because we saw that other disaster and went, oh, thank goodness, but normal. So, okay, on that note, thank you very much for talking to us and appearing. It's been an honor. It's actually really nice to have met you and
Oh,
get the
thank
details
you.
from behind the scenes. So,
Oh,
yeah, it's been a wonderful chat.
oh, thank you. Well, you asked brilliant questions, and I hope everybody enjoys it. And whatever you do, if you see Rob Wilkins at the convention, tell him we need to do Unseen Academicals.